Why is a fed-up empath more dangerous than a narcissist? Most people get this question wrong because they focus on aggression. They look at who talks louder, who manipulates harder, who dominates a room, who creates fear, who demands attention. They assume danger belongs to the person who appears threatening. But real danger is rarely found in appearances. Real danger is found in thresholds. It is found in the moment a person reaches a limit. And few people on earth have a greater hidden threshold than an empath who has finally had enough. The narcissist is easy to identify once you understand the pattern. The narcissist wants control. The narcissist wants admiration. The narcissist wants the spotlight, the validation, the reassurance that they matter more than everyone else in the room. Their behavior follows a predictable path because their needs are predictable. They push, they demand, they manipulate, they test boundaries. The entire game is visible if you know where to look. The empath is different. The empath often spends years studying people without realizing they are studying them. They become experts in emotional weather. They can walk into a room and feel tension before a word is spoken. They notice changes in voice, posture, energy, expression, rhythm, and attitude. They become human radar systems. They learn what hurts people, what motivates people, what scares people, and what people desperately try to hide. Most of the time, they use that information to help. That is what makes them seem harmless. People mistake restraint for weakness. People mistake patience for surrender. People mistake understanding for compliance. And that mistake can become catastrophic because the empath sees more than they reveal. While everyone else is speaking, they are observing. While everyone else is reacting, they are collecting information. While everyone else is fighting for control, they are mapping the terrain. The narcissist believes power comes from imposing their will on others. The empath understands that power comes from understanding others. One is force, the other is insight. Force has limits, insight does not. Think about the strongest dam in the world. It can hold back millions of gallons of water. Day after day, month after month, year after year. The pressure builds, but the structure remains. People begin to trust it. They begin to believe it will always hold. Then one day it breaks, not because it was weak, because it was carrying more than anyone realized. That is the fed-up empath. For years, they absorb disappointment. For years, they absorb disrespect. For years, they absorb betrayal. For years, they absorb manipulation. They give second chances, third chances, 10th chances, 100th chances. They explain away behavior. They forgive behavior. They justify behavior. They search for reasons. They search for wounds. They search for understanding. Everyone around them mistakes this process for endless tolerance. It is not endless. It is accumulating. Every ignored boundary becomes data. Every broken promise becomes data. Every lie becomes data. Every act of disrespect becomes data. The empath remembers far more than people think, not because they are keeping score, because they are searching for patterns. And when enough patterns emerge, something changes. The shift is almost invisible at first. There is no dramatic announcement, no warning siren, no emotional speech. The empath simply stops negotiating with reality. They stop hoping someone will become the person they promised to be. They stop investing energy into fixing what refuses to be fixed. They stop carrying responsibility for choices that belong to other people. And in that moment, the entire balance of power changes because the narcissist's greatest weapon is access to your emotions, access to your attention, access to your compassion, access to your forgiveness, access to your energy. The fed-up empath revokes that access completely, not loudly, not emotionally, not dramatically. They simply close the door. And what makes this so dangerous is that they know exactly which door to close. Remember, they have spent years understanding people, years listening, years observing, years identifying motivations. Years seeing strengths and weaknesses, years recognizing fears and insecurities. They understand the psychological terrain better than anyone realizes. The difference is that they rarely weaponize that knowledge until they are pushed beyond their limit. Then something remarkable happens. The person everyone thought was vulnerable becomes impossible to manipulate. The person everyone thought was dependent becomes independent. The person everyone thought would never leave becomes the first one to walk away. And once they walk away, they do not look back. That is the part many people never understand. The narcissist often fights to win. The fed-up empath stops fighting because they no longer care about winning, and a person who no longer needs your approval becomes extraordinarily difficult to control. Imagine playing chess against someone who understands every move you are likely to make. Imagine trying to deceive someone who already recognizes the pattern. Imagine trying to provoke someone who no longer seeks validation from you. Your strategies stop working. Your pressure stops working. Your manipulation stops working. Your guilt stops working. Everything that once created leverage suddenly becomes useless. The narcissist sees relationships as a source of supply. The fed-up empath sees relationships as a source of meaning. Once meaning disappears, the relationship has already ended in their mind. The paperwork of separation may come later. The physical distance may come later. The conversation may come later. But emotionally, the departure has already occurred. And there is no force on earth more decisive than a departure that happened long before anyone noticed. The greatest misunderstanding about empaths is that people think kindness is their defining characteristic. It is not. Their defining characteristic is strength under restraint. They carry burdens others cannot see. They absorb pressures others cannot measure. They endure situations others would abandon. But endurance should never be confused with weakness. A lion sitting calmly in the grass is still a lion. Silence is not surrender. Patience is not powerlessness. Compassion is not fragility. The fed-up empath understands something many people never learn. Peace is valuable, but peace without boundaries becomes self-destruction. And when that lesson is finally learned, a transformation occurs. The empath stops shrinking, stops apologizing, stops explaining, stops chasing, stops rescuing, stops sacrificing themselves to preserve situations that should have ended long ago. At that point, they become dangerous for one simple reason. They have nothing left to prove. A person trying to prove something can be manipulated. A person trying to be liked can be manipulated. A person trying to be accepted can be manipulated. A person trying to be understood can be manipulated. But a person who knows exactly who they are becomes extremely difficult to move. The fed-up empath reaches that place through experience, not theory, not motivation, not inspiration. Experience. Every disappointment sharpens clarity. Every betrayal sharpens judgment. Every lesson sharpens awareness. Until eventually, they develop something more powerful than anger. They develop certainty. And certainty changes everything. Because anger burns hot and fast. Certainty moves slowly and permanently. Anger makes noise. Certainty makes decisions. Anger argues. Certainty acts. That is why the fed-up empath often surprises everyone around them. People expect an emotional explosion. Instead, they encounter a calm conclusion. The conclusion is simple enough. No debate, no negotiation, no performance, no second guessing, just enough. And the moment that word becomes real, the entire game ends. Not because the empath destroyed anyone. Not because they sought revenge, not because they became cruel, but because they finally stopped offering unlimited access to their kindness. That is why a fed-up empath can become more dangerous than a narcissist. The narcissist depends on control. The fed-up empath no longer participates in the system that creates that control. One seeks power over others. The other reclaims power over themselves. And history has always shown the same lesson. The most powerful transformation is not when a good person becomes ruthless. It is when a patient person discovers their boundaries. Because once that discovery is made, there is no returning to the old version of them. The door closes. The lesson remains. And the person who once tolerated everything becomes the person who will never tolerate it again. The reason most people never see this transformation coming is because they are watching the wrong signals. They are watching volume, they are watching emotion, they are watching reactions, they are watching conflict. But the most important changes in human behavior rarely happen on the surface. They happen underneath. They happen quietly. They happen while everyone else assumes nothing is changing. A fed-up empath does not usually wake up one morning and decide they are done. The process starts much earlier. It begins with small moments, moments that seem insignificant to everyone else. A promise that was broken, a truth that was hidden, a boundary that was ignored, a sacrifice that was never appreciated, an effort that was never reciprocated. Each event by itself appears minor, easy to dismiss, easy to explain away, easy to forgive. And the empath does forgive again and again. That is often their greatest strength, and unfortunately it can become their greatest vulnerability because some people begin to treat forgiveness as permission. They confuse grace with weakness. They confuse patience with acceptance. They confuse understanding with surrender. The narcissistic personality often relies on this confusion. Not necessarily through conscious planning every moment, but through patterns that consistently seek advantage. They learn that the empath will listen. They learn that the empath will stay. They learn that the empath will consider every perspective. They learn that the empath will search for reasons instead of assigning blame. And slowly they begin expecting what was once appreciated. Then they begin demanding what was once requested. Then they begin taking what was once freely given. This is where the danger begins. Not for the empath, for the person exploiting them. Because every act of exploitation creates an illusion. The illusion is that today's outcome guarantees tomorrow's outcome. Human beings make this mistake constantly. If someone tolerated something yesterday, we assume they will tolerate it tomorrow. If someone forgave us before, we assume forgiveness is permanent. If someone stayed before, we assume they will always stay. But assumptions are fragile things. And reality eventually collects its debt. The empath sees more than people realize, not only what people do, but what people repeatedly do. Pars reveal character. Pars reveal priorities. Pars reveal intentions. One mistake can be an accident. 10 identical mistakes become information. The empath understands this. That is why their departure often seems sudden. Yet it is never sudden. It only appears sudden to those who were not paying attention. Imagine a tree standing in a forest. From a distance, it appears healthy, strong, stable, unshakable. But inside, decay has been spreading for years. Then one day, the tree falls. People say it happened unexpectedly. It did not happen unexpectedly. It happened invisibly. The same thing occurs in relationships, friendships, partnerships, and organizations. The final moment receives all the attention. The years that created that moment are ignored. The fed-up empath reaches a point where observation becomes certainty. Certainty becomes acceptance. Acceptance becomes action. And action changes everything. One of the most underestimated qualities of an empath is memory. Not memory of facts, not memory of dates, mirror of experiences, mirror of emotional patterns, mirror of cause and effect. When someone consistently creates pain, confusion, instability, or disappointment, the empath notices, maybe not immediately, maybe not dramatically, but eventually, and once the pattern becomes impossible to deny, a shift occurs. The empath stops asking, "How do I fix this?" and starts asking, "Why am I carrying this?" That question changes lives because it redirects responsibility. For years, many empaths become experts at carrying burdens that belong to other people. They carry guilt that is not theirs. They carry consequences that are not theirs. They carry responsibilities that are not theirs. They carry emotional weight that was never assigned to them. They become emotional shock absorbers. Every impact hits them first. Every conflict lands on them. Every crisis finds its way to them. And because they are capable of carrying so much, everyone assumes they should. Capability becomes expectation. Expectation becomes obligation. Obligation becomes exhaustion. Eventually, exhaustion becomes awakening. The awakening is powerful because it is rooted in reality. The empath begins to understand a truth that changes everything. Being able to carry something does not mean you are supposed to carry it. Ride that again. Being able to carry something does not mean you are supposed to carry it. Strength often attracts burdens, but wisdom determines which burdens deserve to remain. The fed-up empath learns the difference, and when they do, people around them become uncomfortable. Not because the empath changed into someone cruel, because the empath stopped being someone convenient. There is a difference, a very important difference. People often celebrate kindness until kindness develops boundaries. Then suddenly the same people call it selfishness. But boundaries are not selfish. Boundaries are instructions. They teach others how access is earned, how respect is maintained, how trust is preserved. Without boundaries, relationships become extraction systems. With boundaries, relationships become partnerships. The narcissist often struggles with this reality. Why? Because boundaries remove shortcuts. Boundaries require accountability. Boundaries require consistency. Boundaries require respect. And respect cannot be manipulated into existence. It must be demonstrated repeatedly. The fed-up empath eventually realizes something else. They have been studying human nature their entire life, not academically, experientially, through conversations, through observations, through disappointments, through victories, through loss, through connection. Every interaction taught them something. Every challenge taught them something. Every betrayal taught them something. And eventually, all those lessons combine into a level of awareness that surprises everyone around them. Suddenly, they recognize manipulation before it starts. They recognize guilt tactics before they take effect. They recognize emotional traps before they close. They recognize performative apologies. They recognize strategic victimhood. They recognize patterns hidden beneath words. This is why they become so difficult to control. Not because they became suspicious, because they became observant. There is a difference. Suspicion assumes, observation confirms. The fed-up empath no longer needs to guess. The evidence has already accumulated. And once evidence reaches a critical mass, belief becomes irrelevant. Reality becomes obvious. This is where many people make a fatal mistake. They think the empath's kindness was the source of their power. It wasn't. The source of their power was awareness. Kindness simply controlled how that awareness was used. When the empath withdraws their investment, the awareness remains. The knowledge remains. The understanding remains. The emotional intelligence remains. But now it is paired with boundaries. And that combination is formidable because a person who understands human behavior and has nothing left to prove is incredibly resilient. They are no longer negotiating with illusions. They are operating from clarity. Clarity changes posture. Clarity changes decisions. Clarity changes standards. Clarity changes relationships. People who benefited from confusion often dislike clarity because clarity ends debates that should never have existed. Clarity removes excuses. Clarity reveals accountability. Clarity exposes reality. And reality is difficult to argue with. The fed-up empath eventually reaches a place where they stop asking for permission to value themselves.